where if you are more comfortable towards model first approach, that where you can actually create your own class diagrams and then create model. Yes, you can go like you have seen in our last class. Today we will see the code first approach. So if you remember in our previous class, towards the end we have discussed that whatever class it actually created, our entity framework created us the end model classes, right, and the context class, right, and your calling class and your conflicts, everything, right. We are going to write for our own. We're not going to rely on framework. Only thing is whenever we run the program using a context class and all, right, then it will actually check a schema if it is there or not, and then it's going to create a schema for us. Right? Let me create a new project for that. Fine. So let me take it as entity framework for code coach. So we are going to see this for today. So let me make it a startup project. Fine. So whenever we create a project, right, so you already have your config file where your .NET framework will be, and you're going creating this console application, right? So .NET framework will be mapped on, right? So now, so the first thing what we have to do is we have to understand what exactly to work on. So previously we have created Office class above, right? So which contains some. Uh, you can, if you want, you can take the same example and you can go ahead with the same creation of Office with the Postgres approach. Fine, you have this offices and employees. Employees and offices. So let's create two different models first. So initially, we have to create model classes, right? So that we can actually understand what are the requirements which we are actually looking at, right? So first, let's create two model classes. So let me create a class. Let me call it as my office. Say let me call it as office details. Let me take some other class name. So this is my class. Let me run it. So in here, I'll have to create a properties for that, because if you remember, let's compare with your classes which you already have. So this is my class which I already have, which is offices, right? Where you can see I have all the properties which I need. So we can actually go ahead and write properties. Let's create an ID first. So you can see whenever we created our class diagram, you can see that our ID is the one which actually got created. We can create that and do get set. We make it a property, right? So let's create public. What's the next one? This is common. We have name. So let's take name. String name. Get set. And then you have address. And then you have created. Take that. Extension. So this is our office details model class which we have created, and whatever columns you are looking for, we just plotted. Yeah. Now in Office, let's say we have multiple entities. So we have created Office as employee, right? Let's create an employee class. Let me call it as employee intakes. Just I'm taking so that you differentiate the previous example model first. So in employee, let's see what are all the columns we have. We had ID, right? Where you can see we have algorithm. So let's take ID first. Right, and then we have employee name. And then we have gender. So let's say I'm going to take it as character. If let's say gender we have. Let's say, right, and we have some salary. In this as public. Let's say double. Let's say some other. And then we have created data, right? So we have this. Now we have two different models: office details and your employee details. Now we know that office can have multiple employees, right? So let's create that relation. So we have public list of, right, employee details. Employee details, right? Let me call it as employee, okay, which will be your property again, etc. And so, which means my office can contain multiple employees. Same way, one employee will have at least one office, right? Which means I'll have to go ahead with creating an office object. Now this is going to be my foreign key, right? Which is my office. So here I'm going to create office details. Let me call it as office and details section. Right, we have here office. Now we have a relationship here. Now we created two plain classes, office details and employee details, where we have connected both. Right, the office can have multiple employees, and your employee can have at least one office. Right. So our model class are ready now. Now once our model class ready, now it's time to create a context class. Now why do we need context class? Now as we obviously we can't be work with that model classes, you can work. But again you have to go ahead with radio, right? Map everything you have in model class and do. But if you have to map directly these model classes after connecting everything, then obviously you have to use your entity framework classes. So in order to use your entity framework classes, you have to import your DB context. So obviously, which means you have to create some context class and import it, inherit it as such, right? Let me create a simple context class. Let me call it as same thing like office DB context. Let's say how we used to create code. Now this is my object context where I'm going to import my entity framework data. So let me just start using it. Data dot we have it. Okay, haven't I applied to this? Okay, I haven't applied. So to this project, I haven't applied the entity framework details, right? So let me apply that. So I click on this and add reference. You can go to browse because we have your details in your here. Select entity framework and entity SQL server. Click here, click on OK. Right now this project is exposed to framework one and start using system data entity, right, which will actually give you all the classes you want. Now let me call DB context. So this was the one which automatically got created when we actually um, when we were using the directory framework and creating it, right? So if you right click add new item and go for video entity model here. And if you don't remember this, you can always go to data and you have entity data model. Now this will actually create everything for you, based on the approach you're using. If you're using code approach, then everything you have to do. Now it's good that to learn code approach so that you can actually have more grip on entity models. Right? So DB context we used. So now I can use here I'll have to register my classes, which I have used as a modern classes. I can create here so that it will create a separate DB set for that. So I'm going to use public. You have DB set, right, of I will create for office, right, and let me call it as offices, which is going to be get set. Now DB set is like it will actually consider my class, right, model class as an entity. So let me call it as employee details and let me call some employees. So that's it. So this is a simple DB context class that you have, right? Now you have created your model classes and you have created my office DB context. Now this DB context is going to work with our entity DB context class where it will try to connect to database. Now the question is, how can it connect to database? And normally whenever you use your DB context, right, by default what it is going to do is, this will have its own constructor, right, which is office details. It will have its own constructor. So this is a constructor which I have. By default what happens here is it will actually call up your base constructor, right? Now you can see it is giving something called must have intent type. Sorry. Now I'll have to go with the same class name, but I took some other class. Now here, whenever even if you don't call this, right, it will be called automatically because your DB context have got a default constructor. Sorry. And same way your parent class DB context also have your default constructor. The only thing why we need to call this is if you want to override you can see here your DB context constructor are overridden. You can provide a connection string name, right, and there are so many things. If you don't provide anything, right, what it will do is it will automatically consider that your connection string is with the same name of your context class. What is connection string? If you remember in our previous projects, right, go to app.config. Right, in our app.config you have something called connection string. See here. Now this connection string will have a connection string whose name will be same as your context class. And we are going to create this. We are going to create this in our configuration. So these are configuration. Now you can see you have your connection strings. I'm going to add a new connection string, right? Where let me give name first for this. So name should be same as the class name, DB context name. Why? If you want to give different name, you can give, but you just pass it on to base. Now you can see here in base you have some other. Here you have something called name or context, right? You can actually pass on your connection string name if you want to give some other name here. But it's always recommended to use the same context name for your connection string name. Now, what is the connection string? Now, here, let me take. You can actually consider the same thing here. You can see in our connection string what you have. I want data source. Now you can say I can actually take this data source and initial catalog too. Right? Let me copy that and paste here. Now you can see data source is this my SQL Server node what I have, and initial catalog is something which is my DB name. Let me give DB name as office, or let me call it as my office. Now this time we don't have to create your database name, because in model first you have to create your database name, because you have to provide connection string for your model first. But here you just give your data source, which is your database name, and initial catalog, and if there are any integrated security, as I have a Windows authentication, right? I can go directly to integrated security tool. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to append even that. So here I have data source, I have an initial catalog, right, and I have my data source name, now which is done. So here I gave my name of connection string and the actual connection string, and I will have to give which database is this. Now that database is nothing but your provider name, right? So let's go back to config. Now we are going to use my provider name called system.data.entity client. Now this time we are not going to use entity client, it is SQL client. Right? So this is my SQL file. Right? Now this is my connection string, which will be automatically considered by my Office DB context, right? Which is which is inheriting DB context class. Now your connection string, your model classes, and everything are inherited towards this. And your app config is ready, right? And you have imported your default constructor over here, which will consider automatic your string. Now let's go to the program and see how to write this. Now here, whenever you come back to program, right? So don't think that you have to create a separate schema or anything. Just go ahead with your program, right? Just let's say I want to insert some data into, let's say some office and employees both, right? So I can do that. So now let me create a simple program which I can use to create. Now first, obviously you have to consider your DB context, right? So let me take Office DB context object here, because without DB context object, you can't do DB communication operations. So first, let me take Office details. Let me call this Office. Office details. I'm going to add one record first. Let me call Office dot, let's say name, right? So I'm going to take name as just say some of the office. You have your address. What that you have? Create date type. I can do date type now. Right? So these are the main parameters that we have. And then you have your employee. So corresponding to this we have employee, right? So here, before creating employee, let's go ahead with creating getting on employee object. That what is your employee name? Let me take some name here. We have salary. We can do some salary. What else you have? Office areas you have correction to that. Gender. Maybe it's a character, right? Something nothing. Now your employee tab add. Now I want to add the object of. So your office details is ready, your employee details are added to office details, and your office details should be added to your DB context. DB context or employees. Employees is a DB set. If you remember, employees is a DB set, which you have created. Right? To DB set, you are actually adding it. Add or your BJ office. And once you are done, then you have your DB context by save changes. Right? So let me deal with this project. This is invalid documents. One second. Now, it is not employees, right? We have to add it to offices. But because it's an object of an office, because employees object anyways are added to office employee DB set, right? And I'm adding it here. Let me do this. Right? Now we will succeed. Now this is right. So now let's run the program and see how it works. So let me put a console. Right? Right. We have your DB context and the stuff ready. Now let's run and see how it works. Now in connections tree, if you remember my catalog name, which is my actual database name, I gave it as my office. So let's see whether it gets created. So let me refresh this and see. Okay, these are the databases which I have. If you go back and let me run this program, if you want, I can keep it in debug mode. Right, so I've created my DB context. So as soon as you create a DB context, it will actually go ahead and check that. So let me refresh this. So here I'm going what's the issue? Exclude it. Let's search this. Create a time employee. Let me just bring that section. Please started. Okay. A mistake here, one mistake here. So I have to assign it. Assign this. Let me add this to now. Near object, we have an employee. So now we are adding the offices here. Now you can see whenever they say DB context offices, right? It actually was trying to check, and now I'm doing save changes. So the next section, you can see my office got created, right? And you can see the tables, employee details, office, everything got created, right? as soon as you add it. Now let me bring up the data, new data here, and bring up this new data. Now we got some exception, whatever. You can see that it is saying do not expose foreign key properties for the relationship. The entity property will be personal entity property. What I'm going to do, let's delete this my office again and we see what's going to work. I've deleted my office database view. Let's get back. So it's always better to look in real-time debug mode. Now I'm going to create it again. So as soon as you are in here, right, offices.add, you can check this out. If you can refresh now, your tables and everything are done. Right, they are perfectly fine. It actually created everything with the columns, right? You can see identity and primary, right? And you can see your office details got created, and in office details you have a foreign key office ID over here, right? It created because we created an office ID in my office. And now I'm going to save this. When I'm seeing it, so let me, okay, before that, let me do this. I've deleted my office, and I'm going to create it again. So initially you can see when I refresh this, there won't be my office. So when I do offices.add, it is going to add the databases here. Right? We have databases and then save changes. Okay, there was some important key, that's why I can see that. Okay, created successfully. Now you can see you have your databases created, you have your all keys, everything got created. Now check your, you have your database. Now you can see that from your data, right, we were able to create from a code which we created from model classes, DB context, and different things we actually created. Now we'll do one thing. Let's go ahead and run it again. We do something here. Let me do it. I am creating my employees, right? And see here what it will do. So now let's go and see here. My database got created, right? And you have tables. Let's refresh this. Tables are on office. This is not on query. Let me first bring up office details. We have office details here, and let me bring up the employee details, and we have the employee details. Right? Now perfect. So what mistake we did? It's the one which we have to see now. First mistake. Now in our office details, right? Anyways, we connected office to employee in a right way, right? So one office contains multiple employees. Okay, fine, that we have done. But when it comes to employees, right, then we have to make sure there is a key to connect. So we know that for employee details, we have one object to connect, but you need a key to connect to. You need a foreign key to actually connect to your details here. Now, which I'm actually taking. Now this is the first mistake. So we have created a foreign key to actually correct. Second, so once we are done, then our program is running fine, except we skipped create datetime, because create datetime, what we are doing is while creating an object, we are not assigning anything, right? So when we assign create datetime with the current datetime, then it actually accepted and everything was fine. So let's run this again, right? And you can see create successfully. Now go ahead and see your data here. We have two rows in our office, right? Now you can actually continue this doing for many times. So let's say I'm gonna add 10 dates here, right? So I'm gonna run this. Actually, you can create DB context one. You can see once you created once DB context and you have all the things created successfully. Get back to Office. You can see it's 10 details created and again 10 more. Fine. Perfect. Now this is how we create code first approach to schema. We created actually a code. Now you can see how beautifully it is working. We created actually model classes and different stuffs here, right? And we were able to come back, right, and say that yeah, this is something which we need, which I want, and it actually created this, right? So this is how we go with things like code first approach, right? And you can see, few times you may get issues. Now that is how we have to go. Now if you remember how we got into error, right? If you want me to go back and show you that how I actually tracked the error, let me go back to this and let me comment this. Let me run this here. So when I go with save changes, right now you can see an exception happened. But with this exception, I was not able to actually get what exactly is said, right? An error occurred while updating, but I don't know. It says inner exception. So I'll go to view detail. Now this is my main window. This is a window where you will get something why exception happened, right? Now here, even if you go to message, it will say inner exception shows save. It won't give this much. Now try to go into inner exception details. Right. Now again you can see here in inner exception you may get more details in either data or somewhere. So here you can see that it says the conversion of date type to date type resulted in error. Why? Because we were not assigning any date type to that, and it actually was taking null, but in our schema we are saying that it should be date type and date type should have some value, right? And that's the reason why it actually completely rejected our transaction. Now I removed it, and when I run this, right now we are assigning the right value, right? Then we will get a data total. Now you can see there are 12. When I run this, now you can see 10 more got added, right? Save the office. Now this is how we track it, and that's how we are exception handling this much of it to use. Right? So this is something which is a code first model to actually work with entities to go back and see how our schemas are created. Now in here there are some flavors if you want, see whatever classes, model classes you have, right? The column names and the model class, whatever you go and create, same will be created over here. You can see employee details, right? You can see whatever model class name is there. Now, how does it say this is a model class? Because in my context, I'm actually making it as a DB set, which means it automatically becomes a model class, which will be a source for creating database, right? So that's what you can see here. That it's a employee details. Same way, your office details will be same. And even if you take the columns, right, it will be same. Whatever column names you gave, ID, small ID, and name, right, everything will be same. Now, let's say you want to change anything. I mean, I know that my model classes and everything are same. I mean, you want to change some office details names or anything as a column before actually making up your, before running your program, you want to do some changes to your code. You can go ahead and do. Now here for that, you have something called your component models, right? Your component models, it's an assembly which will give you data annotations, right? Data annotations are you can actually create for your model class, for your let's say for your columns, right? Or for your anything for your keys, right? You can create them. So annotation, how we can create for before the declaration. Your annotation always starts with the square brace, right? Always starts with the square brace here, right? And here you will get all annotations. Let's say I'm going to use my table annotation. Okay, you're not getting this because you have to import one class, which is you're using system dot. You have something called component model, right? You have data annotations, and in data annotations you will have something called schema. Now this is a library which you have to use. Okay, okay. So now sometimes if you are creating this for first time, you may not get this. Uh, you may not get this component model directly. What is happening here? It's all okay. Gender, we take it at that side, right? So in that case, if you are not able to find out, you can see this is the one. Your system dot data dot. So if you don't get that right, you can always go back to your assemblies to add your component model. Go to com assemblies. Now here you can see system dot data. Now you can here you can see, right. If you don't find this, you can always add your component model annotations. Click OK. Right? I mean, sometimes if you are creating a new solution, you may not get component models added. Now, this is something which will not be added automatically, right? So, this is whenever you are using annotations in your program, then you have to add. Now, if you get some error, always feel free to go to references, right click on this add reference, and go back to your assemblies framework. And in your assemblies framework, you have all your system provided namespaces where you will find your data annotations, and I've added. Now once you add it, now it will work fine. Now you go ahead and write your data annotations here. Let's say now you can see I am getting my table annotation. Now what is table annotation? I want to give some good name to this. Let's say I just want to give this as, I don't want it as office details, I want it as office. Now these are all part of your code first approach, right? Where in your code, if you want to make something look nice, you can do that. Now here, let's say, now this is my column, right? So you can have your column annotation where I want to give a right column name, let's say. So this, let's say, I'm going to give office ID, like office, let's say ID I want, like just to misunderstand. Now this is where you do it. Now you can give name, address, let's say everything is fine. And same way you can go to employee details here, where I'm going to use system dot component model dot annotation dot schema, right? So here, let's say I want to change table annotation. I want it as just employee, right? And let's say ID also I want to change to employee ID. Let's say we have your column. Let's say I'm going to take it as employee ID. So employee name, gender, salary are okay. Then you can have your office details. Now this is a foreign key, right? Now for foreign key, I can't take it as a column. I think we have something called relation, not relation, or foreign. Yeah, we have foreign key annotation. You can always take foreign key annotation. Now again, the foreign key is just to mention that this is reference key, let's say, right? So let's say I'm going to take it as office underscore ref, FK. I'm just taking an example that we want to do this. I'm just taking it as a reference foreign key ID. I'm changing it to. So these are some things which you can use to. Right? Now let me delete and run it again for you. So delete this database and let's run this again and see how it works. Foreign take this out. What's some error actually? It says foreign key attribute type is not. Oh, okay. We change the name which is not compatible to make it a property. That's fine. So maybe I can use the same name or underscore anyways. But foreign key should always be your office details here, whatever your details are. And whenever you are changing your ID, it should be same. Right? When you are saying off ID, it should be same appended here. Right? So let's not touch the name here, which is corrected. Rather, I'll do one thing to take it as or some other name. Let me call it as office name. Let's not touch the keys. We can actually. Office name I'm touching now is ID, right? Now when it goes to this, we have office details and ID, which is perfectly correct, and it can correct. Now let me run this now. Let me go to my office. Tables, we have employee. You can see, at least you can see employee name changed with your employee ID and all, right? The foreign key is anyway same. Office details ID, which is your office, sorry, there is a table here. Office details and the company's ID. Okay, perfect. Now here your foreign key details you should always mention to your actual entity of the file, not to the column. Right? Same name here, mention here that okay, this is something which is not. Let me run this and see. Let me drop this up. Drop it. So here foreign key is something which you should not use for columns, my mistake, right? And whatever you want to make the foreign key, right? I'm just mentioning it over here, right? The foreign key for this is your office details. Now you can go back and see you have your database created, my college, sorry, my office, and we have your table names been changed. Perfect. Open up your office details, we have friend details, we have your employee details, correct. Now this is your foreign key here, right? Office details ID or business ID. Fine. Fine. So this is how we normally go ahead with office. Code first things here. Now here itself we have one more thing to understand. Now I have already created my schemas and everything, right? I've created everything. Now let's say my program I can run any number of times. Now it won't hit me, right? Why? Because every time I run from my code, I know that the schema, everything is same, and what it will do, it will continuously append the details. Right? You can see 20 details here because I executed it again. Now we have one small thing which we have to keep in mind, that if any model changes, right? Right? Let's say if any of your model changes, then what happens? This is one more very important thing which is there in code first model. Let's say in your employee details, right? Let's say I am going to add one more column called something like string. Let me take it as age, or let's say int age after. Now this is my change in schema. Now basically it is my change in schema, right? Now if I go back and run, right? Now whenever you change your model, right? Now you can see it says the context has actually changed, right? And you can see that it says considering the code first migration to update the database. You always should make sure that you are migrating your new database set whenever you are going from your now normally why do we go for code first update? See, whatever you want to keep in database, right, sometimes, and then access the same database to retrieve it and do some operation. That's a main area where you use code first to actually create your tables, and again once it is done, drop it out, right? But here whenever you change your schema to actually make it always your changes in sync, right? So you have to always call your database initializer always before starting up your before starting up of any program, to actually look up your models and always be in sync with your models before adding anything more. Now let's say I'm adding my maybe age also. Come on. Age, right? I'm just giving some 27, right, age here. I'm giving some age, right, where I'm gonna actually take how it's working. Right? I just give some age and it's actually taking up age here, right? So let's go back and see. Okay, we have already executed, right? When I executed, it says, right, there was some problem, right? Yeah, which means it says we have to use some migration pattern. Now, how can I use a migration pattern? Always, now before doing any operation, always make sure that we are actually migrating. How can I use? I can use this in this way. So let's say, let me just use a data model first. Data. So in your entity, you have one class called database. So in database, you have a set initializer. It always sets initializer, like before doing anything, right? Any operation, it always says that sync your database with the models you have and then work. So let me create one context here. So we can actually create some context for create database if not exists. No, drop database if model changes. Yes, this is the one, because we are talking about model changes, right? So you can take if there are any model changes. Yes, I want to. Now for this model, which model I have to consider? I have to consider my office model, which is my office DB context. Right, this is going to be the model here. Close up. I haven't opened it up. Right. So this one will actually make sure that whenever your model change, right, it will automatically initialize your database by dropping everything and then creating a fresh one. That's what happened. Now you see here that your database already have some data, 20 rows now, right? Let me run this and see what happens. Now our model changed, which means my database is not in sync with my code. I'm running it again to after initializing my code here. So now I think it is refreshing my database because I've changed. But it has to close. Yeah, you can see connection successful, create successful. Now before that, refresh, go back, close these queries and open it for a new pattern. Go to tables, employee, select. Now you can see age, right? And you can see the new data set got created, right? With your details. Fine. So this is something which is different things which we have in code first patterns, right? Where we see different things. So let's wind up here and let's see more topics on NT. We'll have a few more topics on NT in the next class.